Welcome to Creating Better Products, where we explore the real world stories from product leaders, not just their successes, but also their failures and lessons learned. You will get practical tips that you can apply tomorrow. I am your host, Sabrina Mach. I have almost 2 decades of experience and I love learning from others. This is why my mission is to share the stories of amazing product and design professionals with you and the world. And today, my guest is Fátima Rodríguez. Fátima is a product manager and she has over 12 years of experience in product management. She has also worked across multiple industries, ranging from telemedicine to e-learning, recruitment, marketing on social networks, all the way to real estate, e-commerce, and travel. A really diverse background. And I'm excited to welcome Fátima to the show. Fátima, I'm really excited that you're joining me today in this conversation about applying product thinking to platforms. And you're joining us today from Barcelona in
Yes,
Spain. Beautiful place by the sea. So thank you for taking time for not looking at the ocean. So product thinking and platforms, two very big words. I'm really excited to hear a little bit about that. How did you get into this topic and this space, and like how did you build up your expertise on that?
yeah, actually, well, my background is technical. I studied computer engineering a very long time ago, and I always felt really close to the engineering people and engineering teams. But yeah, when I moved to the product management role, I spent some years like more on the user focus areas. But at some point in ThoughtWorks, I had the opportunity to collaborate with some platform teams. It was very so. Normally, product managers don't see platform teams so exciting, but in my case, it was a very interesting opportunity because it actually in this case the company wanted to actually apply more product thinking into their these teams, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then I had like several different experiences in different companies with this type of teams. I really enjoy it to put in practice and to help others to apply product thinking in general, no matter if it is a platform team or if it is other type of team. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and what is a platform team, and how is it different from other teams that you've worked with?
Well, I will say maybe I'm sure there is some more sophisticated definition somewhere in ChatGPT, but I will say, from my point of view, or in the conversation we are going to have today, is the users you have. So in the other type of teams of product teams, the users are the final users of the product you are building. They are in the market out there, and normally it's actually not that easy to access to them. The platform teams, their users are internal users. They are the developers within the company, and they want to build. They have to build products for them so that their work is easier and is optimized, and they can do their own job in an easier way thanks to the internal tools that are built by the platform teams.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. Um, So the main difference, so just summarizing that for myself, is external users versus internal users or customers. Maybe the ease of access to them, um,
Yeah,
but otherwise they're more or less the same in terms of we have customers. Just also our internal users are very technically
exactly.
proficient. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm really curious to hear about. I mean, what does it mean to apply product thinking to a platform? And why are we talking about this? Shouldn't we be doing this anyway?
That's a very good point. Yeah, I would say I think the same. So we should be doing it already since long time ago. But in even in general, product companies don't apply product thinking always in general. So this common sense is not that common. And it happens the same in the platform teams. It comes from a very, like, usually this type of teams don't have the product roles in place. They usually are built with only technical people,
Mm.
on engineers. And I think in the last years they are realizing that many of the techniques and the methods that we are applying for years in other type of teams might apply here as well, because they realize we actually have users. We actually want to make things easy to use in a way that our users actually use our tools, because it's something that happens a lot, that the platform teams or internal teams build tools that they are not used. The internal users don't want to use it, and then that just they are building their own tools. Their users are building their own tools and don't use the ones that are built by the platform team. So this is a very important challenge that you can compare with the challenge that the other teams have with the final users. You build a product and then the users don't want to use it. So to have similar challenges is exactly the same. The only difference is that the users are internal, with pros and cons of course, having internal users. They don't have internal users don't have to pay for your internal products, although there are companies that are starting to giving a try some kind of internal, like, payment system in order to make it more, yeah, more engaging for users. But yeah.
Yeah, there also used to be this approach to internal tools that, well, we've built it, and because people are our employees, they have to use it.
Yeah,
But we know that doesn't work. I hear that from your story already as well. It's like, yes, there is those tools, but especially with developers, if that doesn't fulfill my need, I just go and build something else for myself.
exactly. That's exactly. And if you are a company where the teams have a very high level of autonomy, which is really great to have in a company, we definitely see this as a big benefit when when the teams are autonomous enough to actually build their own stuff and don't have too many dependencies. So they will be faster. They will get faster to where they want to go, and have impact earlier. But on the other side, if they start building their own things all the time, they start having the need of having multiple different like capabilities within the team. That is not that easy, because for internal so for those tools that the developers use, you might need an infrastructure person. You might need someone that is expert in security, another one that is expert in GDPR applied to, or like data. You start having the need of having multiple different skills within the team, and it can happen that you find one person with multiple hats. But if you have 60 teams, you will not find 60 people with multiple hats. It's very complicated, and it doesn't scale, right?
Yeah.
So
And if everyone builds their own tools as a workaround, that's also a lot of time
exactly.
reinvested. And I think, Fatima, you've been part of a really interesting project at I think, a retailer.
Yeah, it's one of
Um,
the largest retailers in Europe. And yeah, we helped them with this, because actually was the example I gave before. We arrived to this client, and we did this initial assessment, to help them to find ways become more effective. And one
why
of
did they approach you for help? What triggered them to say, do this assessment for us?
well, the assessment itself was our suggestion, because they had this desire of looking for ways to become more effective. And we said, let's start from here. We will try to understand where you are, what are your areas of waste. So that was our approach. Let's look for areas of waste, and we can then come up with recommendations in a collaboration mode. So we didn't do it in a way that we just go back to our home and think about how to help you. We did this in a way that we collaborated with them to come up with, okay, in order to become more effective, there are these 5 areas. And one of the areas was applying product thinking for platform teams, because we identified many duplicated solutions because of this level of autonomy in the teams. There were like 30 ways of resolving a login to a certain system. Imagine, this is an example, because every single team was building their own way of connecting or integrating with that. And in terms of security, there were also several challenges. Or in terms of, so there was a lot of duplication, and like in terms of tools they were building for their own, but also in terms of decision making, because as a team, as a developer, so you have to make a lot of decisions technically. So shall we use this technology or this other, or shall we go in this approach with the architecture, or should we go in this other one? And every single team was having these challenges to make these decisions again and again, when if someone already went through the process, you don't need to do it again. Also, you have the risk of not having enough knowledge to make these decisions. So maybe the decisions are not the best ones. When you have the knowledge within the company, you are not. So this is an example of waste. So you are not actually using your capabilities in the best way possible. But there was a reason, so it was not just randomly. So they were very aware that they had this duplication, but there was like a trade-off that they accepted at some point, because they loved their autonomy. So they didn't want to lose this level of autonomy. So they said, we don't mind if we are losing so if we are having some type of some level of duplication, some level of redundancy, because we value a lot our level of autonomy. But that worked very well when they were smaller, but they were growing and growing and growing, and at the point that where they were was like, this is not sustainable. We need to find a way to find the right balance again.
Yeah. And then what was your approach? If we now think about great product thinking, um, we want to reduce some of the duplication. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so the first thing we did was to start with, let's have a look at what's the product thinking level. So what's the level of product thinking mindset that you have in the teams, and in the teams, in the company in general. We did two different types of workshops. One more strategic with the people, with the leadership team, when we were looking at how you are organizing your strategy, you are communicating, and how you are organizing your teams, the structure, how are the governance that you have in place, tools. So we looked at different topics at strategic level, and then also at team level. So we understood and we identified where are the gaps.
Yeah.
And
And quickly, when you say product thinking, could you just summarize briefly just the core principles? Doesn't have to be full definition, but just for people listening, what were the key things that you looked for when you had those 2 levels of workshops?
yeah, so principles, I will say we want to. So one important thing is the alignment with the strategy. So there should be clear goals. Everyone should understand what's the strategy, where do you want to go as a company, as a department, as a team, and all of that should be connected and aligned all the time. So it shouldn't be something that so the company communicates, our strategy is this one for the next 5 years, and then forget about it until next year, when everyone asks, oh, okay, we have been building this because this strategy. so I missed the connection. So there should be a connection all the time, because this helps everyone at different levels to make decisions, knowing that this is where do you want to go, and should help you to actually make decisions in terms of priorities, in terms of best approaches for implementing things. So at all levels.
Yes.
So that's one of the principles that we look at. The governance, the way you track this is very important as well. It's very important as well to look at the users, to understand users, to align as well all of your decisions, strategy, priorities with what the users need.
Mhm.
Also, the way you organize the teams, they should be in a way that they have enough level of knowledge and information, so that they have this level of autonomy to make decisions and to move fast without having too many dependencies. So with the right roles in place, cross-functional team design usually is very far from developers, or discovery is actually not done at all. People just build features and test them afterwards. And that's a big problem when you apply product thinking. You are always experimenting.
Mhm.
You have to start with what do I want to learn from this, and how are we going to validate that this is actually what we think it's going to help users, right? So that's yeah, some examples. I'm sure I'm missing some, but
I think that's a good high level overview. So thank you, Fatima. That definitely helps to understand what were the things that you looked at in the workshops. Then what happened after this initial exploration?
yeah, after that, well, we came up with some recommendations based on this. Like, for instance, having, so one of the gaps in this case was not having all the product roles within the teams in the platform area. So they were having, I think, only one or two product managers. The rest of the teams, there were 11 teams, 11 platform teams, and only two had a product manager or someone with this hat in the team. It doesn't have to be like a product manager, but it at least having someone with this hat in the team. And we recommended to come up to build or to create an enabling team as per team topologies, how they recommend to actually help teams to increase and to acquire some certain capabilities that they are missing. In this case, it's an enabling team that is going to help the teams to acquire these capabilities around product and design and user research, and yeah, among other things that we recommended. Second thing that we did was to actually look at, okay, what are your current ideas about what does it look like a product, like a platform product. We didn't have time to actually do a proper user research and product discovery. We recommended them to actually start doing that, but in parallel, we decided to start smaller. They already had very good ideas, potential ideas that could become a very good product for platform to reduce waste and to reduce duplication. And we started to analyzing those ideas. So we came up with a list of, I think there were 10 ideas, and we did an assessment of those ideas. We used ICE to prioritize them, like the ICE scoring, which is from Impact.
How do you spell it?
ICE is an I
Ein?
from Impact,
Yeah.
the C from Confidence,
Yeah.
and the E from Is.
Ah.
And yeah,
Mhm.
it's from Itamar Gilad, and I learned it from him. And we use this to look at those ideas. Okay, from impact perspective, how much do we think that this is going to impact our goal as a platform team?
Yeah.
And what's our goal? So we had, of course, to define what's the goal, how are we going to measure this impact. In our case, we decided to measure as saved time per
Mhm.
developer. So we came up with a number for every single idea, of how much time this product will save for the entire department. So we could compare all the ideas with the potential impact they might have. And then we assess the confidence. So what's the level of confidence do we have that this is actually going to be the impact? Do we have data? Do we have evidences? Or is it something that we just have as an opinion and we don't have anything? So based on this level of confidence, we came up with a different next step to say, in this case, the potential is very high. We think the impact might be very, very high, but the confidence is very low. So we should do some kind of experiment to validate that this is actually a good idea. While on the other cases where the confidence was very high already, there were some examples, some teams that were implementing that idea. Then just we can go to the first MVP, for instance. We don't need to invest time on user research. And then the ease was the ease. We measure it like the opposite of effort, like how easy it is, how easy it will be to build this idea to actually have the impact we are saying we will have. So we did several workshops. One was to quickly assess this, like I think it was in a couple of hours, all the ideas. And then for those that were more promising, we did a deep dive to understand more. Okay, for this idea, what's the pain point we are resolving here? What's the how this is going to help, or how much aligned is it with the company goals and with the strategy that we have? What are the challenges? Was it implemented in the past and failed? Why did it fail? So we wanted to understand each of those ideas that were more promising, and refined the calculation of the impact and the ease and everything with more details. Did kind of a iteration, like to understand more.
Yeah.
And we came up actually with a forecast of, so with a ROI calculator. That was great tool that we
Right.
shared.
Return on investment calculator.
Yes,
Yeah.
because with different, it was a spreadsheet, and with different variables you were able to say. So I remember this idea was around helping the teams to do the setup of the AWS accounts, because it was really a manual work and they had to do it many times every time a team was set up, but also they were doing a disaster recovery event every X months, and they had to delete and recreate all the accounts. So it was like, yeah, a lot of time, and that they could save, and if they were able to use a tool, right? And we came up with this a spreadsheet where we had different variables, like for instance the number of teams, how many teams are going to actually adopt this tool every month, and we were able to calculate that in 6 months. If so after 6 months the team will, the product will reach the break-even point, and from there every new team that was adopting the tool was like generating extra like benefit in this case in save time
Hmm.
measure metric. But yeah, it was very, very useful, because you can then play with the variables, and you can say maybe the adoption rate is not that high at the beginning, or maybe it's higher later. Because yeah, one of the things that we mentioned before, it was very like really a principle that we wanted to recommend here to the client, was not to avoid forcing anyone to use the products that we were building, because this doesn't work, in order to actually find what's actually valuable for them. If you force them to use it, you might have people not using it at all because they are being forced, or if they are using it only because they are forced, you don't know if this is actually valuable or not. So that's why we decided, no, the people should be, so the products should be optional as much as possible. And that's why we created this adoption plan based on, we will test first with the first teams, and then We will find ways to communicate it properly, to make very clear for everyone why this is valuable for them, and get a lot of feedback from the users on the way. And in that way, it should be easier to find something that is really valuable, which is actually the purpose for everyone here.
Mhm. The return on investment calculator sounds nice. So you described how you've used it. I'm super excited about it, but I'm just going to poke at it a little bit. Like, what role did it play in persuading your stakeholders in what action to take? Did it play a role at all?
Yes, yes, it was really an amazing tool. I think it was one of the most important deliverables that we had at the end of this engagement, because that so we did it together with the client, so they learned how to do it, and they were planning to actually use it, and that was one of the purpose, to communicate not only to the team to understand what they were doing, but also to the leadership team and above, to demonstrate the value of, even from business perspective, of what the platform teams are doing. Because many cases companies only look at platform teams like something developers need, and that's like in the cost area, and I don't care anymore. But it's actually something that brings a lot of value to the company if they have proper like way of measuring how valuable and how meaningful are all the tools that you are using inside the company. Yeah, and you can connect them with reduction of cost, but also with reduction of risks, because there are other examples of potential platform tools around security, and for instance, where you or around performance and reliability, which is not just a technical thing, it's something that the users perceive. If your product is not secure enough, if you have any incident around security, this really has a big damage to your brand, and it's very difficult to recover from there. So it's something that brings a lot of value, to being able to ensure that you are bringing, um, yeah, this security around your product, and the same with performance and many other aspects that come from the platform teams.
Yeah, fascinating. So that sounds like a really good, yeah, valuable slice where you've helped the client. Now I'm really curious, what were the things that were hard?
Hmm. Well, before changing to the challenges, I wanted to mention as well that the third thing that we worked with them was around measures of success, because I think it's very important topic here. So it's not just starting building things, and of course the ROI calculator was exciting, but at some point, so you have to start measuring. You have to start first defining how will you measure your success, and you can decide or define this at the very beginning, but then you need to put in place some ways to actually track this regularly, and to track if you are going in the right direction or not. So I think this, I wanted to mention that was an important piece of what we did in
Mm.
this case.
What were measures of success that you identified? So, I mean, with the return on investment calculator, we have already some kind of financial value. What completed that picture with the measures of success?
Yeah, in this case we used Adora metrics. um, so that was one of them. Honestly, in this case, they were quite good at them, so there was not big room for improvement in those metrics. But I think it is in general, when the level of maturity maybe in product thinking in general in the teams is not that good. I think they are very helpful. Um, and then all the metrics that we identified at product level, they have a connection with the ROI at the strategy level, but then at product, so every single product might have their own way of measuring their success. So we recommended like having different levels of measurement and tracking. like the more strategic with this ROI and the DORA metrics, and then the other one about the product thinking applied. So if you want to actually become a product, to have a platform as a product in your company, you need to have the product skills in the team. So we recommended to actually track how much your skills and your maturity level is in your teams, because the levels were not that high when we started. And then at product level, every single product should have their own goals and their own success metrics. And then, so for instance, in the sample I mentioned is the save time, right? So that's how you will be setting up your goals and tracking how are you doing regarding your goals.
Cool. Yeah, I think that really brings it to life by having those specific examples. Thank you, Fatima.
Okay.
So then I'll poke back at what were the things that were hard along the way.
Well, things that were hard. It's difficult when you don't have the capability. So people with the mindset and the knowledge and the experience around product, that they actually engage with this new way of thinking, right? But on the other side, it was a challenge at the beginning. But on the other side, when you actually start digging into the right questions, and I remember in one of the workshops that we did for this deep dive of one of the products, one of the stakeholders said, "Wow, this really makes totally sense." Like when we started asking about, okay, but why the developers will start using it, or why, like this type of questions, when he started thinking for the first time, oh my, but there are these different types of teams, and there are teams that when they are recently created, they have these challenges, but when the team is already a very established team, they don't have this challenge because they actually have this and this. So when you start understanding your users, in this case developers, you understand why they are not using actually your current tool. And was like, oh, now I understand. That makes a lot of sense. But if we do, and then creativity comes, and people start thinking, oh, but if maybe, like it's solutioning, but it starts helping everyone to understand, okay, if this is not working, we might come up with different ideas of how can we help them. And it's not that the developers don't want to use it because they are like, they don't want, and that's it. That's not the case. You realize that there are reasons why they are not using your tools, and because they have other like variables in place, and helped a lot to start engaging more and more people that at the beginning were like, product thinking, this is for product teams, not for platform.
Mhm.
And it became really more interesting for them.
Yeah. So you mentioned the thing that was hard is when you arrive and there aren't the product thinking skills in the team yet. So it was also interesting to hear kind of what that looked like in reality. How did you tackle that? How did you overcome that? How did you take people along that journey of realization? I heard one thing was asking the right questions. Was there something else that helped you in that?
Yeah, I think in general, um, showing or learning by example is the best way to learn anything, and to
Yeah.
see the benefits of anything. So I in my experience, if you start smaller, maybe you don't need to start applying product thinking to all your single products or initiatives that you have in the team, but start with a single one, with one,
Yeah.
and ask for trust at the beginning. You have to ask for a little bit of trust. Like, give me just 3 months to apply this. Let's trust on it and test it, and let's see how it goes. And normally, if you choose the right thing, normally it helps, because it's very difficult when you have not experience at all on something. If you have just to trust because without seeing and without experimenting how beneficial that might be, it's very challenging. So in this case, that's what I think can help. And that's actually what we did with this list. So we recommended you should go to do a product discovery, user research, and do the entire process. But instead, we start, but you do that. But let's start with something small and concrete that you already have in mind, and let's apply product thinking to your idea. That maybe it's not. Maybe if you do product discovery, wouldn't be the idea with highest potential, but at least it's something that you already had in mind. I take your idea and I apply it to it product thinking, and let's see how it works. And it was the way they started thinking, okay, this mindset is really valuable. Let me learn more. I want to learn more about it.
Yeah, interesting. I was actually going to follow up with a question of like, how do you build that trust? But I think you already answered that, which was connect to a goal that they have already anyway,
Yeah,
an idea that they have, and then make it really small as an experiment so that when you ask for the trust, it is not like trust me for the next 2 years, but trust me for
exactly.
a small slice of that. Um, and then what was the last thing that you said? Yeah, connect to the goal, make it small. Um, yeah, and then experiment. I think that was the third thing that you've
Yeah,
said.
do
So I
it as
think,
an experiment and learn from it. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and is that kind of the essence for how you build the trust with your stakeholders, or manage to invite them to trust you for just long enough to prove out the value?
yeah, I would say that's a very good recipe. And I think it's also very important, the fourth factor, which is the communication of
Mhm.
the success or the I. It's not the failure, but the learning, right? Or both. I mean, sometimes the expectation, because I remember we were actually having this conversation in this case when we were doing this these workshops, etc., that we wanted to set up properly expectations when you are doing an experiment like this. Expectation, of course, you hope everything goes well and the idea is a successful idea and you resolve all the problems in the world. But what happens in reality is that, and I think the benefit of doing this experimentation method is that you learn on both ways, and you have to be prepared to and open to learn that maybe this idea will not work.
Hmm.
And this is not that easy to say than to do, like because many times people that is running this type of like product managers or people that is driving this tend to have like the hope that this is working, and it's hard for us to see signals that it's not working, and you try and try and try again. So you need to be open to have a result that is telling you this is not the right way. Maybe you don't need to just throw it away, you just need to iterate and to do some changes. But I think it's good to communicate, and not only for yourself, but when we were saying the receipt, I think it's important to communicate as well. When something is not working as you expected, is not successful as per your success metrics, it's very good learning anyways, because you are saving a lot of money and time and investment if you know in 3 months that this is not going to work, than if you learn it in 1 year from now after one entire team dedicated to build it. So it's something that helps you to build this culture around how to actually do experimentation and use it
Yeah.
to reduce risks.
Yeah. And how did your stakeholders react? Do you maybe have one story where um, uh, someone was proven wrong, and how did they handle it? And how did you help them be okay with it?
Well, that's a good one. Let me think about it. So I remember. So in this case, we did the deep dive assessment in two ideas. They were like really excited about one, and the other one was not like that much. And the result was the opposite. Like in terms of the amount of potential, the impact that they were going to get from the second one, the one that was having lower priority, was like a surprise for them. So yeah, I think it's in this case, I think maybe you don't need to do anything. You just need to share and communicate what's coming from the evidences, right? Because I think that's the good thing of this method, that you don't need to convince people by
Hmm.
like persuading them. You just need to use data and evidences that you get from the work that you are doing when you are deep in dive, when you are. So it's based on evidence. It's not based on my experience as product manager that I tell you that this is the right way. No, I can tell you a story. I can tell you this is the user. This is what is the problem of your teams, and we learn thanks to this experiment that this is not going to help you because X and Y. Because yeah, I remember another example that was about the backstage tool that is really like a trend lately, which is a solution. So it's a portal for developers where they have like all the different tools that they have, that they have to use, and in the latest months, like many teams in product companies wants to have like the backstage, like it's like the developer portal, a sign that they have a cool company, and and that they're in the right way. And might be the case, but when we listed these 10 ideas, that was one of them. And we realized, yeah, but considering all the pain points that our users have, honestly, this is really a cool tool, but maybe it's not the one that is going to bring the biggest value at the moment, considering all the issues that they have and considering our goal of becoming more effective. Maybe in the future, maybe for certain things that will be a right place to put things, but not as a goal. The goal is not to have a developer portal. It should be the mean to achieve something else. So,
Yeah.
but again, I don't remember. So it's not like a big explanation that you need to do. It's by doing that the stakeholders uh, are able to realize by themselves.
Yeah.
So
So you create the space for them to discover it for themselves.
yeah, exactly.
What strikes me though about the stories that you shared is that there were always multiple ideas. At
Yeah.
least two in that one example that you shared, where they felt strongly about one and then the other kind of one. In the other story you shared, there was 10, and then one was really not, was cool, but not really that valuable. And I think that's maybe something to keep in mind, is that when we have multiple ideas to choose from and we evaluate them against one another, it's much easier to say, okay, we thought those was going to be cool, good and valuable, but it isn't. Let's do the other thing. But if we only have one idea and then we find out, not so good, that's a much harder situation to deal with and much harder to let go, because what do you do instead, right? You have to solve something. So I think that's maybe a critical thing that I would point out, is that if we want to provide that space for anyone in our organization to discover for themselves and apply that product thinking mindset by doing, having multiple options to choose from is a really critical part for creating that space.
Yeah, I will say that's definitely a thing. And I will say, when we say, because many people might think, and in this case, I think it was kind of the case as well, the person that was in love with this idea was a bit disappointed, of course, but not because we told them, but we told him, but because he realized, and he was like, oh, my idea is not there. But in any case, when there is some kind of intuition that some idea might have a potential, and you do this assessment, and it's like in the ranking at the bottom, it doesn't mean that you have to forget about it. Maybe you have to do another experiment to actually. So um, it's, I think, the mindset that you have to put in place to be sure that you have the data, and you have maybe with the data you have, this doesn't look very promising, but you can do some tries to gather that data. So that, yeah, it's not like, because I saw this a lot, like, and this feeling of, oh, my idea is not there. But I think it's a good thing to do, to always look for evidences and data.
Yeah. Super, thank you. What are some misconceptions that you might have encountered when you try to bring product thinking into this platform space?
Yeah, one of the things was, I remember, people is think that applying product thinking is doing a lot of user interviews and user research, and they think that they, of course, they usually don't have the skills in the teams, and they are scared about it, like, oh, but how can we do user testing, how can we do user interviews if we don't know how to do that. And yeah, I think there are many ways of because the user interviews actually have a purpose, right? So the purpose is to understand what are if you have yeah, you can do it to discover new problems that they have, or new opportunities to help them with something, or maybe you use them to understand better a concrete problem that you identified already. And of course, if you have an expert in the room, the interview might be much more like effective in a way. But talking to users is always helpful. Talking to developers in this case is always helpful. You just need to find the right forums. And we in this case, I remember we recommended to, yeah, to use the maybe existing forums. They already have like tech huddles, cross team, where they discuss or share things that they are doing with other. It's very good that platform teams attend to this type of meetings, because they might be sharing a lot of their issues there. So that's an example. So usually people are scared about, oh, but user research or connecting with users, with developers, this is very difficult. It's not that much. You just need to put like proactively put in place some channels where you ensure that you are getting feedback, you are understanding about how they are using your tools, or how they are using tools that you want to replace, in order to learn about it. What is definitely something that you need is some capacity in your team to actually invest on that, because this doesn't come from the sky, like as a gift. Is something that takes time to review feedback, to understand, to do this exercise we were talking about. So it requires capacity. You need to have at least one person who is going to be dedicated to the product management thing.
Yeah. Yeah, super fascinating. So, just to summarize for myself, one of the misconceptions is with product thinking, you need to do a lot of user research. I mean, yes, you need to do it, but you can start small and very lightweight, use existing forums, um, create capacity in your team to just go and talk to people as a first step.
Yeah,
One doesn't need to overthink it. But again, start small, start talking to people.
yeah, definitely. And I will say another is, yeah, ex- this experimentation mindset. Try to always validate what are your assumptions about anything you will be building, and try to build it incrementally. Don't try to build it like everything, like all the features in one version, in one launch.
And what's that misconception around the experimentation that you encountered?
Yeah, the misconception is that it's not that easy to identify the smaller, so the minimum viable product in this case, or the smaller piece that you really need to actually validate your idea. Normally, people tend to think about the bigger like amount of. So when there is a lot of confusion about the MVP word, I think in general I hear talking about MVP many times when it's not an MVP.
Mhm.
And I think yeah, it's something that you don't need actually to with an MVP to learn or to validate something. You sometimes just need to have some interviews or to understand how users are using an existing tool to actually validate your hypothesis and to move on to the next step. So normally people think about, yeah, an experiment is just you need to build something complete and launch it, and then you measure it, and that's not it. It's like one of the steps, but you can have a lot of them before in order to gain confidence and to be more sure that what your idea actually makes sense.
Yeah. And what is something that worked for you when helping um, colleagues, stakeholders, clients find those smaller slices and move away from the it has to be a fully built thing that we release to the world. What's worked for you there?
Um, yeah, I think the story. So how you explain this when you are explaining it makes totally sense. It doesn't need a lot of sophistication explanation because I am trying to come up with a real example, but I remember so the one this one product that I mentioned before, the one about the AWS account, when we came up with this adoption plan,
Hmm.
when we were so normally people don't spend time thinking about it. That's the issue, right? But if you spend time thinking about it, it's just common sense that you start smaller and you in the plans that is already that in new couple of teams will be starting next month. What if we start with those two new teams because they are fresh they will be coming from, I mean, new joiners to the company, so fresh eyes. And it was like a very first good step for this tool to test. And then second step, if you get feedback from them, there is another event about this discovery. I always say discovery, this disaster recovery event, where all the company is all the teams in the department are doing this event. So you have learned about from these two teams. You can choose another 10 teams to keep learning from them, and so the sequence makes sense. And you really realize that you are learning and you have time to learn to iterate and to do changes instead of just waiting, building the entire thing for 6 months and then launching it with the big risk of failing and not
Yeah,
having time to learn, right? So it's not a complicated story to sell to stakeholders. It's just a matter of sharing it, like thinking of a moment of how can we do this in a smaller pieces. And I think in general, I didn't, at least in my experience, I didn't have this challenge when you actually share it in this way and you show the risks that you are reducing by doing this approach. I
yeah,
think it
great,
makes totally
great
sense.
example. Thank you, Fatima. Um, One thing I want to also ask you, because we talked a lot around how you are helping clients and stakeholders with things. I wonder, what are your lessons learned? What were your highlights? But also, what were your lowlights? Things that you tried and they just didn't work.
With this product thinking
Yes,
applied to
applying that
platform.
to the platform space.
Um, yeah, one of the highlights I will say this ROI calculator.
Hmm.
So I think it's very important to find a way to connect the the solution, which is applied product thinking for platforms is a solution already, right, for something. So the important thing here is to connect why this is good, what's the problem we are trying to resolve, and how this is going to have an impact on the company goals or on the company strategy somehow. And in this example I mentioned before was this ROI calculator helped us with that. So we came from the effectiveness and the problem they had to with redundancy, duplication, etc. We came up with, okay, we suggest you to try it with this solution, but the way you will see this is going to actually help you to reduce your duplication and redundancy is by measuring this ROI by using the save time. So it's kind of connecting all the dots, and you when you can do that, it's very clear that the stakeholders and the client really understand, right? Because otherwise you might know it's maybe obvious for you because you did it in the past. You see this platform as a product works very well if you do it. You trust me, you can ask people to trust you, but when you connect the dots and you put it into numbers and into evidences, helps really a lot. So that's one of the highlights, I would say. Collaboration is really a key piece as well. I think sometimes you try to save time doing some things on your own and then present them to the stakeholders, etc. I think it's always much more meaningful and engaging when you collaborate with the stakeholders or with the client to build to come up with the final solution or proposition. So I think that's also key learning. Because in the past I had I had this experience of, because of not having enough time or because X reasons, you try to come up with already a lot of work done, but then this process of how did you get there, how did you get to come to generate this proposal, is the piece that is missing, and it helps people to be part of it, to actually feel that this is the right solution because they went through the same process to come up with to the solution. Yeah, I think that's the highlights. And you asked about the lowlights,
things that you've tried and that didn't work. If some failures. That's
some failures. In this case, I will say it was kind of a failure because what I mentioned about the measures of success, there were some the DORA metrics in this case. We were like pushing a lot for them because this is kind of a standard right now for engineering teams. But in this case was not that applicable, maybe because the level of maturity they had. So I think a learning here is that you need to be very aware. So when you are looking at measures of success, you need to understand where you are. So to actually create this baseline as soon as possible, so that you know this is going to be helpful or not. Because if you just identify your metrics and then forget about them until you actually want to measure your experiments or you want to track it, it's maybe too late. Maybe you realize by then that, okay, but if we have started already really high, it's not going to be a helpful metric to know if we are progressing towards a goal or not. So I think that was one of the things that we learned in this case, that maybe that's not the right metric. But I'm trying to think of more generic but it's not coming to my mind now. Yeah, well, one learning that we tried to fix on the way was I have already mentioned, because at the beginning we had the plan to suggest to the client to do a proper discovery. So when you have this challenge of I want to apply product thinking, where do we start? One of the approaches that we thought about was, let's start from the beginning. Let's look at all the problem space that is in the development area, and let's choose uh, the right places to start with. And as soon as we started the conversations with the stakeholders, we realized that that's not maybe the best approach, because the people have in mind already some ideas, what we mentioned before, right? And it's like you might start talking or looking at other things while the stakeholders still have their ideas in their minds,
Yeah.
and they cannot look at there because they still think that this is the right idea to look at. So I think that was learning that, well, I mentioned it as an outcome, but it was a process that we just had to pivot there in our approach, because we realized that no, I think we need to stay with the what's in their minds already, and I think it worked very well in that sense, because at the end of the day, what we wanted was to help them to learn how to um, how to how to the new ways of working, new ways of doing, when you have to actually look at ideas and try to decide if they have potential or not. It doesn't mind if it is ideas that come from a discovery, of if they come from a stakeholder, from the leadership team, or if it comes from a team member. It doesn't mind if the idea, you can assess the ideas in 10 minutes, in 1 hour, or in 2 hours. You invest just some time, and you can come up with an idea of with an idea again of if it has potential or not. And this is the right mindset, instead of just taking for sure that if it's my idea will be good. Just apply some time to assess it, and to look at it from a product thinking perspective.
Nice. Now, Fatima, I'd love to make things really concrete and actionable for people who might be listening. If someone would love to start on bringing product thinking into their platform team, how could they get started? So they might be an early product manager who's been assigned, but there might be that team consisting of developers where maybe the product manager isn't there yet, but someone sees that opportunity, says, okay, how could we get started?
Yeah, well, I would recommend first to start with what we already mentioned. So if there is already some idea in place, even if it is coming from stakeholders or even within the team, if there is something that the team has been like pushing to be prioritized for a long time, and the stakeholders don't want to do it, that's a good example to just go through it, try to understand the idea from product perspective, try to assess impact, confidence, and ease, and try to find evidences to calculate this ROI quickly. It shouldn't take too long, and it's an easy tool to go to have a discussion with the stakeholders to actually put in place this. There is a connection with these business goals, there is a connection with the benefit for developers, and maybe you have like the approval, let's say, to actually invest time on it. Or it could come from a stakeholder when some idea you don't see the value, but this stakeholder is pushing too much to do it. You you might have to do it, but you can spend some time assessing the idea and coming up with real evidences to say, well, we can do an experiment with it, but let's not build it entirely. Let's build this piece of it, in order to gain some confidence or to validate that your idea is actually the right one. So I will try to start from there. Then maybe you can start looking at what are the capabilities in the team, or what are the different good practices that you can do. But I think that will be a good starting point. And also, I don't want to forget about don't forget to talk to users. So for whatever you are doing, you can start establishing some channels where you can start learning from them. This will be helpful always.
Super. Thank you so much, Fatima. Now, tying things back to the overall theme of the podcast, which is creating better products. Why is it important that we bring product thinking to platform teams? How does that help us create better products?
Well, I think the platform products are products themselves. So in general, if you apply product thinking to those products, will be more helpful for users and will really deliver value to them. We mentioned before many times users are not using your product. So internal users, developers are not using internal tools because they don't resolve any problem they have actually. So in that sense, is improving the developer experience of your users, because you will start thinking about what's the real value that you are delivering to them. And this kind of help you to find the right right product for them. But indirectly, you are also building better products for the final customers, because the developers have time to actually focus on their own products for customers, and don't have to spend time on things that really don't bring value to them. So it's kind of a double benefit that you gain if you apply product thinking in platform teams.
I love that. Thank you, Thank you, Fatima.
Welcome.
And now to close things off, what are three things that you recommend maybe to our listeners to read or listen to, things that inspire you either on this topic or anything else that you draw inspiration from?
Okay, so I have to admit that I am not. So I think that in general, product thinking applies to platform without having to be too much focused on the platform like type of team. So in general, whatever um, book or a podcast or blog that you find about product will be applicable to platform teams. So in that case, I recommend Itamar Gilad. He wrote a book called Evidence Guided. I really loved it because it comes with a lot of practical examples about how to from goals, so how to define goals and strategy for a product, towards going through prioritization methods, talking to users, how to do experimentation, how to connect this with the tasks that the teams are doing. So I think it's really a good reading, and his blog is also very good. Teresa Torres is another person that I would recommend. It's really great when you want to learn about how to do product discovery. And I think that's, as mentioned before, that's one of the things that engineers or platform teams look at it like more agnostically, right? Like more like, I don't know very well what's in there, and maybe it's helpful. She wrote the book Continuous Discovery, which is really recommendable, but she has a lot of also posts. So she has this blog and the talks. So I think it's also some very good to look at. And I think I will say that
Super.
in general.
Thank you so much, Fatima.
Welcome.
And final question, where can people find you?
They can find me in LinkedIn. I am Fátima Rodríguez Calvo. I work right now at ThoughtWorks. I'm enjoying it a lot because this brings to me the opportunity to work with different companies from different industries and different challenges. So that's really what I like a lot. And I will say that's my main. So well, I am in X as well as Fafolki, and yeah, I think you can find me there.
Thank you so much, Fatima. It was really inspiring hearing from your experience. And thank you for sharing so many good stories and specific examples around how you've tackled different challenges that really brought it to life to me around how I could use those tips that you shared the next time I encounter a situation like that. So thank you for making that so tangible for us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Fatima.
Bye.